This is Laricy Live, and I'm your host, Matt Laricy. We're giving you unfiltered access to the world of real estate, where we can cover the market trends, news, and honest answers to keep you ahead of the real estate game. Laricy Live is brought to you by Lincoln Title. Lincoln Title is the best and most efficient title company in Chicago and is the best place to close your property. This podcast is brought to you by Titan Builders. Titan Builders have been remodeling condos and homes in the Chicagoland area for over 35 years. Whether it's remodeling your kitchen or bathroom or getting your home ready for sale, Mike and Mark are your go-to guys. Laricy Live is brought to you by Guaranteed Rate and Ben Cohen. Ben Cohen is the #1 lender in Illinois and can close your loan in as fast as 8 days. All right, so today we are here talking about a little thing we like to refer to as the spring wave. Now, the spring wave, what is the spring wave? Well, there's 4 quadrants to the marketplace, okay? You got the spring wave, you got the summer shift, you got the fall market, which is either a frightful fall or a fall push, and you got the holiday market. And the spring wave is the hottest time of the year. The spring wave is January 2nd to the end of May. And what happens is that every year we end the year on a lull, right? It's Christmas season. You got that week between Christmas and New Year's. Nobody really knows what day it is, what time it is. It's kind of like a void, right? And then all of a sudden January 2nd hits, and it's like a light switch goes off, and the market takes off like a rocket ship. And every single year, buyers, sellers, agents, people off the streets come up to me and say, what happened? What happened that made the market go crazy? And I said, well, this spring wave happens every year. Because what happens is that Chicago is the most rent-heavy city in the country, and people's leases come due end of March, April, May, first part of June, right? So if you got an April-May lease, which are 2 of your most popular lease dates of the year, and you want to buy, you can't buy in April, May. So you got to buy in January or February, okay? And January, February, there's nothing on the market because the average consumer that is selling thinks the best time to sell is March or April. Like, give you an example, it was just 5 degrees out this week. I don't know when this podcast come out, when you watch it, but it was 5 degrees out this week. Now, I had sellers call me up and said, hey, should we delay listing our property? I said, why should we delay listing your property? They said, well, it's 5 degrees outside. I said, who gives a shit if it's 5 degrees outside? She goes, well, what type of buyers are going to be looking in 5-degree weather? I said, well, if a client's or if a buyer's lease comes up in April, the weather doesn't change when their lease date ends, okay? But for some reason, sellers in their heads thinks that the weather changes people's lease dates, and it doesn't. So what happens is that you don't have any sellers coming on the market in January, February, and you have demand just skyrocket, so the market just goes absolutely insane. Thus, we start the hottest time of year, the spring wave. Now, this is one of the reasons why I say January is the new April. I feel like when I was a kid, like April was like the best time of year. And I feel like it's changed a lot more. Maybe it's because we rent more now. I do feel like a lot more people are renters now than they've ever been before. And because of that, specifically the younger people are looking to buy, and we have a huge wave of younger buyers, that makes January be like like if you're a boomer, April is January. And if you're a millennial, Gen Z, or what's the one after Gen Z now? Alpha. Is that what it's called, Alpha? I don't know. Alpha? Wow, what a name. Alpha is, they're renting. So January, February are the times when they're going to buy. How is the 25 spring wave going to differ from the previous years? What specific market is different? Well, I think what's going to be the big difference here is that, first off, I've been saying for about a year now that I think 25 is going to be the best market since 22. And one of the reasons I think that is the frozen domino effect, okay? So a lot of people have been frozen with where they've lived for the last 3 to 4 years, thinking that the rates are going to drop back down to 2022 levels. And when I tell people who say, like, well, I want the rates to drop, I can't wait to get them to get back down to 2 to 3%. I say, well, 2 to 3% rates are equivalent to when your parents told you they had an 18 to 19% rate, okay? It's just not happening again. It's a thing of the past, okay? So move on. And people thought in 23 they'd drop, they thought in 24 they'd drop, and finally in 25 they're like, you know what? At a certain point, we got to buy, right? You got a 1-bedroom condo, you got married, popped out a kid, you're in a 1-bedroom condo with 3 people in there, like you got to move, okay? You got a 2-bedroom condo, you got 2 kids now, and you got to move, and you want to get to the suburbs, and you're nervous to buy up because you don't want to get that higher rate. Well, guess what? Like, you got to move. And so what this is going to create is a domino effect. And one of the big domino effects that I think we should watch is the North Shore and the Western suburb markets, okay? So the inventory's been the thinnest out in those markets. And why does that affect the downtown Chicago markets? Is the fact that if you got a 2-bedroom condo in River North and you want to sell and then you want to buy in, like, let's say Winnetka,
you can't sell because there's nothing available in Winnetka. And one of the reasons there's nothing available in Winnetka is because a lot of people who are selling Winnetka want to sell their place, buy a place downtown, and then buy a place in Florida or Arizona or something like that. And the reason that those people in the North Shore and western suburbs haven't been selling is because the Florida, Arizona, Texas market has been so hot and they couldn't buy anything. And they were also a little bit nervous to buy their other place in Chicago, in downtown Chicago, because of the safety or, sanctuary, or one of the three big pillars that we've talked about. So what we're going to see happen this year is a lot of people in the north and western burbs who wanted to sell their place can now sell their place because the warmer client markets are starting to loosen up, right? We're starting to see inventory build in Florida, Texas, Arizona, Utah, those type of markets where people are buying second homes. I mean, look at Austin, for example. Austin was once the hottest market in the country. It's now a big buyer's market. So you're starting to see these things kind of flip. So what that's going to do is it's going to loosen up the inventory in the suburbs because those people are now going to be able to sell their place and then buy that home in the warmer climate and then get a second home downtown Chicago, because now downtown Chicago is starting to open up and get a little bit better again. And then that's going to allow the person who owns a 2 or 3 bedroom condo to sell, to then buy up to the burbs. And it's going to allow the people who are renting to buy the 1 bedroom, and the people who have the 1 bedroom to be able to sell that and buy the 2 bedroom. So it's going to be a complete and utter domino effect. And I think that domino effect is going to be the main reason why 25 is going to be much better than 22. I do think that inventory levels by the end of the year will be more than 22. I'm not saying, let's be clear, I am not saying that we're going to have high inventory. I'm not going to say we're going to have like medium inventory. I'm just going to say that we're going to have a better inventory than we've had in the last couple of years. We also have to realize that real estate runs in 5-year cycles, okay? And 2020 was the first year of a 5-year cycle, and 2025 is the last year of a 5-year cycle. We will do a whole podcast discussing about why the 5-year cycle is going to change starting in 26. But I think because we're at the end of the 5-year cycle, it's going to make the spring wave be very hot. And I do think this will be one of the last really big spring waves we're going to see for a little bit. There's a few things that we want to watch for during the spring wave too, which is going to make it be very dominant outside of the domino effect. The first thing is that there's a backlog buyer out there. There's a new terminology I made up. It's called the backlog buyer. What's a backlog buyer? A backlog buyer is a buyer who started looking in October, okay? So a lot of people started looking in October, November, December. So let's call it Q4, right? Holiday market. And not that much stuff came on the market because the average consumer that's selling doesn't want to sell during the holidays. So there's nothing on the market. So then when something pops up on the market today, okay, it's like a lion in the weeds waiting for a gazelle. It pops. They jump right on it. And you got 3 months of buyers who've been looking at that jump on it. And those backlog buyers make the market get very hot, which pushes it to go towards multiple bids a little bit sooner. The other thing to know about is that we have the anxiety buyer right now as well. What's an anxiety buyer? An anxiety buyer is, there could be backlog buyers, but they're buyers whose leases are coming up in April. And because you haven't really seen anything in October, November, December, and when something comes up today, they have anxiety that they're going to miss out on it because they haven't seen that much happen. So then they buy fast, they buy high, and that creates multiple bids. So you get the backlog and the anxiety buyers. The other thing to kind of know is that we will see a much more steadier stream of inventory now. This is the other thing to start watching. The big thing I tell a lot of my buyers to know right now is that the fact that like the last 3 months, it seems like there was no inventory. So you have anxiety, and that creates the anxiety buyer, which also helps out the backlog buyers. But what you have to know is that moving forward from now is that this is prime time for listing season. Okay, this is when we'll see the biggest stream of inventory from now to the end of May. So if you miss out on a place today, it'll be up tomorrow. Another one comes up, it'll go tomorrow. Another one comes up, goes tomorrow. Within a week, you'll see at least 5 places you could buy. And then those 5 will sell. And then the next week, there'll be 5 more. And then those will sell. And then the next week, there'll be 5 more. And then those will sell. And eventually, you get to a point where you'll be able to move fast enough to be one of the people who buys one of those 5 properties that come up the week that you want to buy. But there will be a steady stream of inventory. The last thing I'd watch, and the best advice I tell buyers that are looking right now, add $30,000 on top of anything, okay? Anything you see that comes on the market, add $30,000. Something comes up at $500, so just in your head, be like, okay, it's $530. Something comes up at $750, say it's $780, okay? Now, certain types of the areas, like if you're in River North or the Loop or something like that, that mentality is not gonna, apply, okay? But if you're buying a condo under $1 million in the outskirts, add $30,000 on top. And this way, you won't be as frustrated because there's a big strategy a lot of people take is they underprice properties to get them to bid up. And on average, these are going at least at $30,000 over. And if you look at it that way, it'll be a lot less stressful. What's the difference in showings in the spring wave compared to the holiday market or fall market? I will say that it's like 10 to 15 times more. I think last year in 2023, we had 100 showings in Q4. And in Q1, I think it was like 2290 we had. Okay, so it was. I mean, look at that, 100 compared to 2290. Now, I'm not going to say 100% it was 2290, but it was right around that number. Okay, we're going to do that stat again at the end of Q1, and we're going to show the difference in how many showings we had in Q4 compared to Q1. I can't tell you right now because I don't have the information because obviously we just started Q1, but it is a substantial. It is an eye-opening statistic. In fact, we probably had more showings in the first weekend than we had all the fourth quarter this year already. Like it was gangbusters. I mean, if you see our schedule now compared to just 2 weeks ago, it's like being in a different planet. What do you suggest buyers do to make their offer compelling and stand out above the competition? I would say, honestly, first and foremost, call and present your offer. Like, have your agent call and present the offer. That sounds wild, but I'll tell you, we had like 35 or 36 offers on this one place, and 8 of those offers, ended in my spam box. I talk about this all the time. People's offers end in my spam box. Nobody even called. In fact, like after we accepted an offer, I finally got like a message, like a text. It wasn't a call. It was a text saying, "Did you get my offer?" And I was like, "Well, who is this?" By the way, like I don't have every number saved in my phone in the world, just so you know. So like if I get a text message that just says, "Did you get my offer?" No name, no property address, just "Did you get my offer?" I mean, what the hell am I like? I mean, this makes me sound like I got 100 listings at a given time. I don't know. Did I get an offer on what? And then I'm like, on what property? And then they send over like a question mark. So then I'm sending Gretchen the message, the number. I'm like, whose number is this? And they're like, it's John Smith. I'm like, fuck, great, John Smith. So there's a million John Smiths in the world, right? You know, so like this is what I as a listing agent, I'm putting together cryptic messages to try to figure out who you are to send an offer. You could have just picked up the phone and said, hey, it's John Smith. I sent over an offer on XYZ property. Here's what we're offering and why. That would be very good. This is one of the reasons why people probably hate realtors is that you hire somebody that doesn't do your job. In my opinion, 50% of your job is negotiations. That's 50% of your job. You have to be okay with negotiating and confrontation. If you do not like negotiation or confrontation, you are not built to be in real estate. It is a sales job. As much as we want to say it's not a sales job, as much as you want to try to spin it into something else, as much as you want to put on these like really expensive dresses and walk around and look like you're really cool, you are a salesperson. And you need to call and present the offer and tell me what you're offering and why. So what's the number one thing I think you can have to stand out? Call and present your offer. Make your case. The person I accepted on the 35 or 36 offers, she was one of the only people that called. And she pushed for it. And you know what that made me do? My client said, Matt, you choose the offer. What's the best offer? And I was like, honestly, out of all the offers, this is one of the main people who pushed for it. And she said they really want it. So my job as a listing agent is to pick the path of least resistance for my seller, okay? Which person is going to be the one that's going to close this deal? Which one? Who's going to give me the most confidence? Well, if somebody's calling me nonstop and telling me that they're going to do it, they're waiving everything, they're like on top of it, you know, and it's compared to a person who ended up in my spam box, and let's say the spam box offer was even with the person who called me, and they're like, who are you going to choose? I'm going to choose the person that called me every time. Like, if you don't even have the decency to call and present your offer, like when we run into a problem during the transaction, which will happen, I know that I'm not going to be able to get a hold of you, which is going to make a bad experience for my seller. And then my seller won't care if the other agent sucks and doesn't do their job. All they're going to care about is that they had a bad experience selling their property, and that's going to reflect poorly on me, which can reflect poorly in the future for my referrals from that person, which means I'm not choosing your offer. So really the main thing that you can do to stand out, which is very simple, call and present your offer. That's the main thing. When I'm interviewing, if I'm a buyer right now, I would say, do you call and present your offer? If you're looking to list your property, and you're going to interview 3 people, be like, hey, who negotiates your offers? What's your negotiation style like? I tell people my negotiation style is like Ari Goldin Entourage. If you haven't watched it, watch it. I'm a madman. It makes me sound like a total asshole. And yeah, the guy's kind of extreme in some ways, but I'll tell you, sit in the room and watch how these negotiations go down. And tell me, who do you want on your bat? Do you want the guy in your team that goes to spam, or do you want the guy in the team that's calling nonstop to make sure that my voice is heard? You know, and you want a property. Like, it's that simple. What strategy should seller takes to stand out during the spring market, and how is that different during different times of year? There's different strategies for different times of year. In the fall markets, I overprice my properties. I price them a little bit high to leave room for negotiations. Every fall buyer thinks the world's going to end. They're the chicken and little syndrome, right? They think the world's going to end. It's always over. So even if I price a listing at $1, a fall buyer is going to want it at 50 cents, and they're going to tell me why it's worth even less than 50 cents. So you need to price in that room for negotiations. In the spring, we got the anxiety and backlog buyers, as we discussed. We got buyers who are shitting their pants. They're not going to be able to find something. So if I interview a seller and like, hey, let's list it at 565, 575, I'm like, let's list that thing at 550. And you're like, whoa. And then every seller's nervous. Like, I don't know. That's a big risk. I'm like, listen, if the place is worth it, if it's really worth 575, okay, and you price it at 550, there's enough buyers to get it to bid up to go way over that, okay? Because there's one thing that people know, the anxiety buyers know, is like they want a deal, and when they see something, they'll overpay for it. So you want to underprice or price it at market during the spring, and you want to overprice it a little bit, not like crazy overprice in the fall. Now, here's the other thing to kind of note is that different properties have different strategies, right? So if I got a penthouse in River North and it's a crappy market, I'm not going like way below market value because I ain't getting multiple bids because they ain't moving. Okay, so this isn't a one-shoe-fits-all type strategy. I'm just saying like average outskirts like that. I'm still going to price it aggressively if it's under $1 million in like River North, something like that. But if I got a luxury property and it's a penthouse or something like that in the Gold Coast, we're going to take a different strategy because we need to leave room for negotiations in places like that. How will higher mortgage rates affect the spring wave? I think it's going to be irrelevant. I really do. I think your low price points under and this is going to sound terrible for some people watching this cross country, but in Chicago, downtown Chicago, under like $250,000, that would be considered low. So in some areas that might be like $100,000, but in Chicago, like under $250,000 would be considered lower price points. I think the mortgage rates are going to like hurt those markets. But at the same time, due to the high mortgage rates and due to the high, inflation, everything that's going on, and our taxes in Chicago, our rents are at all-time highs. So it's like, if you look at like, okay, well, what's cheaper to buy or to rent at this time of year? It's like, I don't know, like, most markets, it's actually, you take, if you take your down payment out of it, it's cheaper to buy than it is to rent. And at the end of the day, when you rent, because I get a lot of people like, well, I don't want to lose a bunch of money. It's like, okay, well, if you're spending $2,000 a month and you rent for 12 months, like that's $24,000 that 100% is gone. So if you bought something, would you lose less than $24,000? I would imagine so, right? But, I mean, of course, I could be wrong, but I'm saying, like, there's a risk with anything. There's 100% guaranteed. This is one thing I tell anybody, and there's going to be a lot of people, should I buy or rent? I say this. I say, like, there's a 100% guarantee. This is guaranteed. Nobody can tell me otherwise. They can't argue with me. There's a 100% guarantee that if you rent, that money's gone. It'll never come back, okay? I think if you're financially capable and in a position in life that you can afford to buy, okay, let's stress that you're financially capable. If you're skating by, just starting off your career, maybe in a bad financial spot, fixing credit. I'm not saying this. I'm saying if you're financially able and you got a good job and you got a good head on your shoulders and you're able to buy and you're between buying and renting and you can financially afford it, I would buy every time. I would never think twice, always. But, this is a very personal decision. That's my advice on it. With multiple bids, are you seeing buyers have to pay commissions with the new law? So, the law took place on August 17th that sellers were no longer required to pay a buyer's agent. They have the option to not pay a buyer's agent. I haven't seen a single instance where a buyer has been paying their agent, nor have I seen a case where, like on the place where we had 30 plus offers, I didn't see one offer come in without a buyer's agent's fee. So the answer is no. I don't think it's going to change. To be honest with you, the main change I've seen is that you got to sign a document. We'll close it at that. What neighborhoods are performing better or worse? We still got a tale of two cities, guys. We still got the tale of two cities. We're gonna talk about the tale of two cities in a podcast coming up here once we hit February. But for the time being, the outskirts are overperforming. The downtown markets, I wouldn't say are underperforming. I'd say that they're now going more towards balanced. But honestly, I think some buys are West Loop and River North this year. I think they're going to be big buys. Big buys are going to be West Loop and River North. How are home prices expected to trend? This is a big one to watch. Home prices go way up in Q1, and that's because you get the best price growth in the first quarter. I always say is that, remember, the market's a marathon and not a sprint, okay? You can't dictate the price growth in Q1 and say it's going to be for the rest of the year. Prices tend to go down in Q4. So, if prices go up 10% in Q1, but then they go down 5% in Q4, guess what? You're up 5%, okay? So, what goes up comes down, rates, prices change at different times of year. So it's important to understand that, yes, you're going to see a big price growth at the front, but don't expect it for the back. I expect the outskirts will probably go up anywhere from 3 to 6% this year. And I do think the downtown markets are going to go up for the first time. They haven't really been going up. I expect a 1 to 2% growth in the downtown markets this year. How do agents act during the spring? The spring wave is crazy. There's a lot of pressure. People are super stressed out, and they have a lot of anxiety. And here's the thing: is like a lot of agents aren't used to working or working hard. I'm not saying all. I say there's a lot of good agents, but there's also a lot of bad. And if you go from holiday season, because let me back it up. A lot of agents, once they hit fall, they kind of take their foot off the gas because they've made what they wanted. Like a lot of agents, they only want to work, make a certain amount of money. They make that amount of money, and they're like, I'm done for the rest of the year, right? And that could happen in October. They could just shut down for Q4. They do a couple rounds of traveling. They go to Christmas. They go on vacation for that week. They come back, and all of a sudden their phone starts ringing off the hook, and then they got to start working again. Well, if you go from like having 0 appointments for 3 months to having like 5 appointments in a week, which is like, in my opinion, like really low for a day. But like, you go from that, like you can get a little testy. And what we start seeing is the passive aggressiveness start to happen. This is the time of year when people just kind of freak out over no reason. Like for example, like an agent starts calling me about, changing a status or why didn't we update them on something? And it's like, listen, like, again, I don't have everybody's number saved in my phone. And at this point in my life, I'm not a mind reader. So I can't read people's minds, meaning that like, I don't know every person in the world that wants to make a showing request on my property. So if you make a showing request on my property and it accepted an offer, and then you get upset that it accepted an offer and start lashing out at me, I don't understand what the problem is. Like, I mean, I can't read your mind. I haven't talked to you in months, yet you want me to now understand that you have a buyer looking in this area that we've had on the market, by the way, for maybe a month and a half. So yeah, I think a lot of agents cannot handle the pressure of the spring wave, and it leads to a lot more arguments. People are a lot more passive aggressive. I always tell people I'd rather you just be aggressive. I'd much rather, for the record out there, I'd rather you just be aggressive, not passive aggressive. Just skip the passive part. Just get right to aggressive. I just can't stand when people try to say something, but like, they want to say something, but they're too big of wimps to say it. So then they like kind of beat around the bush about it. It's just like, just come at me. Come at me swinging, and then like just back down from there. Like, it's kind of like, that's one thing. Don't you remember when you're a kid, like you get in a fight, right? And then after you're done with the fight, like everything was cool, right? But leading up to the fight, you had like a problem, and you couldn't get past it. And then you have the fight, you guys throw some punches, and then like everybody's cool. It's like, just get to that point. Just get it done with. Don't beat around the bush and then like sit there and like stand like that. That's what drives me crazy about the spring wave with agents. It's just the passive aggressiveness. Just it drives me nuts. Are high-end buyers more active this season compared to last year? We have seen a spurt of high-end closings, Cranes, Real Deal. They've published a lot of this, of the high-end stuff. What people have to understand is that the spurt of, $3 to $5 million sales that have happened in January are not the result of December offers. A lot of them are the result of October or November. And I mean, look at this move that Gretchen's doing here. She is crawling underneath to get a bottle here. You can stand up and walk across. We are okay with that. Anyways, there is a lot of high-end sales now, and you get a lot of high-end sales. I'd say like you don't get them as much as January as you do. Like this is one where I see you do a lot of them after the Super Bowl. After the Super Bowl is when you see a lot of high-end buyers kind of pour into the marketplaces. Again, somebody's out there watching like, I've been crushing January with high-end sales. I'm sure you have. I'm not saying you're not. Okay, I'm happy for you, but I'm saying I see more. The majority of them happen in February. One of the reasons why is like a lot of luxury buyers, okay, and sellers. They travel during the holidays, then they come back, okay, and a lot of them have kids, so they got to get the kids back in school. They got to get back in the routine, okay, and a lot of them are like still kind of settling back down. And then once February hits, they're able to kind of get back and refocus on kind of buying again or selling. So that's why we see a lot more high-end sales, I think, as we lead into February than we do in January. January is a little bit more popular with places under $1 million, and February is a little bit more popular above $1 million, but that's just what I see. Are there any hot spots or undervalued areas in Chicago that investors should be aware of? Yeah, I mean, listen, any of the downtown markets. I've beat this to a dead horse, is that the downtown markets are on sale. They're on discount. It's a Nordstrom anniversary sale. You want to get a good price, buy there. You want to overpay, you got to buy in the outskirts. It is what it is. That's what's going to happen in the spring wave. What impact is the job market having on the real estate demand? In all honesty, I've seen zero impact, like good or bad. Like, I mean, we are seeing more people get transferred to Chicago. We are seeing, more people go to RTO, which is another podcast we got lined up to talk about as a return to office. But for the time being, is that like, yeah, job markets had no effect. Is there enough inventory to meet buyer demand? No, there's never enough inventory to meet buyer demand. It's January. There's not that many listings on it. It's a little thing. A big thing I tell all my sellers, like, listen, January, February, reap the benefits. It's the best time to do it, which is why, honestly, January is my best month every year for contracts, is because we punt so many sellers to January, and we have talked to so many people for 6 months to list it in January, and then we just demolish January with sales. We live in Groundhog Day. The 4 quadrants are the 4 quadrants. They don't change. It's the same shit that happens every single year. Whenever anybody watches these and says, Matt, how do you predict the market? It makes me sound like a douche. I get it, but how do I predict it? It's like the same thing happens every year. Now, there's something leading up to it that can make it a little bit better or a little bit worse, right? We go into lockdown, it might be a little bit worse, and then we punt that a little bit, blah, blah, blah. But like overall, notwithstanding a pandemic or a huge, world war or something like that, the same shit happens, and something will happen to make it a little bit better, a little bit worse, but the quadrants are the quadrants. What advice do I tell agents for surviving the spring wave? Keep your head on, stay focused, have a good game plan on. The reason we crush spring wave is that we prepare for spring wave in the fall. So what do we do in the fall? We hired a new agent. We put our systems in order. We reevaluate all of our weaknesses and made our weaknesses strengths going into this. So once January 2nd hit, everybody's like, yeah, it's busy. It's super busy, but it's not like we didn't know this was going to happen. I tell them, like, kiss your families goodbye, January to like June, maybe July. Enjoy your families while you can. The 2 hours I'll allow you to see them. I'm kidding. Everybody's going to be like, this sociopath, right? Another Reddit thread's going to start. Right? Another one? We got another one going. But the reality is that we prepare in the fourth quarter for the spring wave. So like for my agents, any agent out there that's watching this that wants advice on it, it's just like prepare. Understand that like it's going to be super busy and take advantage of the busyness, right? Embrace it. Don't lose your head. Take a breath, and try to take advantage of every opportunity that comes to you, because the summer shift's going to be real. We're going to see a big shift down, which we'll talk about. It's going to happen June 1st. So enjoy the fruits of the loin while you can. You just had a baby. How are you preparing to survive the spring wave yourself? So yeah, I just had a kid, Lux Loire Laricy. It's my 4th kid, so she's a beautiful baby girl. So now I have 4 kids. I had a boy, girl. So she's my 4th. She came 3.5-ish weeks early, so she was due January 23rd, and she was born on January 8th at 1:22 in the morning. It was emergency C-section. And how did I prepare? Here's a good example, guys, is that you have a C-section. First off, that was my first C-section experience. It was wild. Like, I don't know how anybody sits in there with that. The amount of blood I saw on the floor, like, I almost passed out. And there was my wife, like a rock star, was making no noises, was just like, let's just get this over with. Like a Spartan in there. She's laying there just like getting, and she's like moving around. I literally felt like she was getting eaten alive by a shark, just the way she's getting tossed. And I'm sitting there getting queasy and nothing's happening to me. Then you get out of this room and they put you in this room with these blaring lights like this. And they're like, hey guys, nobody can go to bed because like we got to make sure that she's okay and keep pushing on her stomach, make sure she's not bleeding out. And we got to watch the kid. So like you sit there, you just sit in this room and you're just there and you stay up. And I think it was about 6:30ish. They let us out to go up to the normal room where you can lay down. So we get put up to that normal room and they were like, hey, catch some shut eye. We'll take the kid for some tests, etc. So little baby Lux went out with them, and my wife's like, I'm gonna, get some shut eye. Obviously, she's exhausted, and I was sitting there. I was like, I don't know, like I at this point, like I've already broke my routine. Like I just gotta push through this. So I just stayed up and worked, and I made my calls, and I left the room and went to there's like a little area where I could make all my calls and do my work, and I just stayed up and worked. So that's how I prepare for the spring wave. Is like I understand myself, even with a new kid or not. Like I got to stick to my routine. Again, I'm not saying I don't help out. Like I did the night feedings, I do what I can to give, my wife some help. But ultimately, like this is our busiest time of year. And like I got to provide and I got to do what I can. I got a company that depends on me. I got a family that depends on me. I got 2 offices now. Like we gotta make sure that we're working. So, there's gonna be some sacrifices you have to make. And that's something that me and my wife talked about in the fourth quarter as we headed into the first quarter to be prepared for this. So again, it's all about how do we prepare for these type of markets. Is the housing market unaffordable? Not really in our markets. In all honesty, like the $400,000 to $600,000 markets can get a little bit crazy where they can be unaffordable, but we're not like really in like like a New York, Manhattan, where like, like a one bedroom's like $3 million. Like I would say that Chicago, and it has been statistically ranked as one of the most affordable big cities in the country. So I don't really think we have an affordability problem like some of the other like major metropolitans across the country do. A lot of people are predicting that 2025 home prices will remain stable and will be a balanced market, slight edge to buyers. Do I agree with that? I completely disagree with that. I think it's going to be a seller's market the majority of the year in most parts of the marketplace. I do think the downtown markets, which has been statistically a buyer's market the last 4 years, is going to trend towards a balanced market. I think 25 is going to be an amazing year. I think you got to strap in, be prepared, because this spring wave is going to be real. That's all I got for you guys. Thanks for listening to Laricy Live.